I think Oregon is just cursed and the universe hates us.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Statistical breakdowns on today's show. And do not forget, 7 p.m. Pacific time tonight, Oregon softball in the Super Regional, how they advance, 2 keys for Melissa Lombardi's team. That's all in today's show, which is brought to you by friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I am now going to recede back into the mood I had when I started talking into your feed on today's show. Okay. The College Football Playoff Committee has decided unanimously to move to a straight seeding system rather than this automatic qualifier nonsense. You're the 6th ranked team, but you're in the 10th slot. You're the 11th ranked team, but you're in the 4th slot. Nonsense that they had last year in the playoff that led to Oregon's first game being against the eventual national champions. Now, I will make this very, very clear. I do not believe this is what robbed Oregon of a national championship. That is not what happened here. I do, however, fully 100% believe it would have been a lot more enjoyable to go through with a straight seeding system rather than what happened last year. Now, if the straight seeding system... Hold on. Before I get to that hypothetical, let me talk about why this is a good idea. First of all, not every conference championship is created equal. And just because you have a conference championship doesn't mean you should be ranked above somebody else. Perfect example. The 2 lowest ranked conference champs last year were Boise State and Clemson, I believe. Was it Boise State and Clemson, or was it ASU? And the ASU might have been in there. I think Boise was a little bit higher. So ASU, Clemson, Boise, any of them. If Oregon had lost the Big Ten championship game to Penn State, they would have, in that funky format, been punished of sorts, but really rewarded, of course. They would have been punished and not been able to get a bye because they didn't win their conference. But hey, these teams won conferences that are not as tough, so we're going to put them ahead of this team. So last year, Penn State was seated behind Arizona State and Boise State. That's ridiculous. Penn State played a tougher schedule, was more deserving of a higher seed. Now, I don't fully agree. In fact, I don't agree at all with how a higher seed actually gets rewarded, where you get a bye. Okay, that's great. But really what you should get is a home playoff game. The first round games should be neutral site contests because that should be a punishment of sorts, or an incentive rather, to get out of those particular games. And the ultimate prize for having the best regular season should be a home playoff game. We're not there. I don't know that we'll ever get there in a 16-team format that will arrive in 2026, and it certainly won't be this year in 2025. So that's what should happen, but don't know that it will. I like that they're going to straight seeding, but as an Oregon fan, you got to feel like this is just a sick joke at some level. Like, Oregon goes 13-0. If they had waited 1 year to expand to a 12-team playoff, they never play Ohio State. The 4 teams are probably... Georgia is definitely in there. Texas might have snuck in. And Notre Dame, perhaps. No Ohio State, can guarantee you of that. Would not have happened. So the first year that change happened, Oregon got on the bad end of it. Doesn't mean they'll be on the bad end of it forever. But man, the year after we go through and everyone knew going into the playoff, during the playoff, and coming out of it, you know what? This is not the right format. You shouldn't be doing it this way. Just make it based on the committee's actual rankings. And it was so obvious that they unanimously decided to change it now. Like, oh my gosh. Like, that's just, at some level, that's just a sick joke. That's just like, oh man. Oh, that is a gut punch. That is a gut punch. If straight seeding had been implemented last year, Oregon would have had their bye to the quarterfinals, which they of course got, and they would have played the winner of Boise State and Indiana. I'll place a 9.8 confidence meter that Oregon's winning that football game. Then in the next round, they would have played either Penn State, Notre Dame, or Clemson. Now, could they have lost that game? Absolutely. Notre Dame beats Clemson there. We saw Notre Dame and Penn State play. It was a coin flip. So if you played Notre Dame in that spot, can Oregon beat Notre Dame? Yeah. Also could have lost to Notre Dame. But the reason I bring this up is because this is big news that the playoff format is changing in a way that is positive overall for the sport. But the Oregon angle is just like, man, really? Really? If you'd had the 4-team playoff in 2012, Mariota and Chip Kelly would have been in there. If you'd had, I don't know if in 2014, if they kept the BCS, if Oregon's in the national championship game, because it's probably FSU and Bama at that point, and it ended up being Oregon, Ohio State. But it's just like, oh, it's just the pain and suffering of being an Oregon fan is just right there on display. And again, you have to beat Ohio State for a second time eventually. I think it's pretty clear that wasn't going to happen. Do I like their chances more last year and going forward to play a great team like that, potentially for a second time after having played a game or two, rather than taking almost a month away from playing a football game? I really do. I really, really do like their chances more. And if Oregon wins that first game, which I think they would have against the Broncos or Indiana, at the very least, it wouldn't feel as bad as January 1st felt. That's like one of the worst sports viewing experiences I have ever had. That could have been avoided had this arrived a year earlier. But hey, it's here now. So Oregon will have that going forward. And we don't have to have debates, and I don't have to go back and say I was wrong about wanting to win the Big Ten championship game. It's just whatever the committee seeds you as, that's what you're going to get. And because they're not doing what I think they should do, which is reward the top seeds with a home playoff game, I don't think Oregon will be a top 4 seed this year in college football. I expect them to be in the playoff game at Autzen Stadium. Sign me up. I'll go. If my schedule lets me go, you better believe I'll be there. So at least there's that. So amidst the woeful reflection on what should have been, an optimistic tone from me, ever the optimist going forward. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. 2 of you came up with one heck of a trivia poll. First, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's really easy to lose track. You think you've got enough, and then you're going, wait, where did all my money go? That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. All-in-one convenience is what they are all about. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances now with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, that's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. That's a great deal. Go check them out at monarchmoney.com. Never forget my second segment sips. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. So, Let's talk stats for Oregon football. And I want to shout out Zach and Nick, a couple of my Locked On Ducks insiders, who got a trivia question that I posed to the crowd over there, right? Which is why you should become an insider too. You get all sorts of perks, priority mailbag access, and whatnot. The question was, who were the last 2 Oregon running backs to go for 1,000 yards in the same season? It's pretty tough. The year is 2008. The answer, LeGarrette Blount, and he was second in rushing yards to Jeremiah Johnson. Now, I discussed this notion of having 2,000-yard rushers recently on the show, and I gave it a 5 on Spencer's scale of agreement, which I think is which is higher than I'd normally have for a prediction of that caliber. And something that I noticed in that 2008 season, and Jeremiah Johnson and LeGarrette Blount were both really good. Johnson went off in the Civil War that year, I think, against the Beavs. That might have been the year before. I don't know. I remember that long run he had down the sideline. It was in Corvallis. No, that would have been 2008. Odd year, or even year rather, was in Corvallis. So he had a huge game. So did Jeremiah Masoli. But for that to happen, and the reason I only say it's a 5, but I do think it's more likely than it has been in years past under Dan Lanning and his staff. I don't know why I can't talk right now. Is because you have the least mobile quarterback of the Dan Lanning era. Bo Nix, incredibly mobile. It's part of the reason he was a 5-star recruit. Not the only reason, but that was a part of it. Dylan Gabriel, mobile, not a huge runner, but definitely capable. Went for over 300 yards on the ground in his previous 2 seasons while at Oklahoma. So definitely, but didn't do it a ton, only 150 yards rushing last year. So you have to have, of course, a good offensive line and good running backs. You have to be committed to the running game, which I think makes putting up a couple of 1,000-yard rushers in the same season really tough in the RPO-heavy Will Stein offense. And you kind of have to be somewhat limited through the air. You can't have an all-out aerial assault. If you're someone that thinks Dante Moore is popping off this year and keeping the preseason Heisman hype he has, which is top 5 or 10 nationally, which I think is a little high, but I think top 5 is too high, top 10 maybe not. But if you think he's having that sort of season, well, you definitely don't think Oregon's putting up 2,000-yard rushers. You can't. Doesn't mean you won't have 2 backs that have a good season. Of course, that is something you have to have every single year. But there was a shuffling of quarterbacks in that 2008 season when they both went over 1,000 yards on the ground. It ended up being Jeremiah Masoli, mostly after Justin Roper got hurt. Masoli came in and started running the football a heck of a lot. And then, of course, he was the starter to begin that 2009 season, and things took off. But the passing game on the season only averaged 204 yards a game. That's why I keep this at a 5 on Spencer's scale of agreement. Like, kind of possible. Maybe it should be like 4.9, just ever so slightly leaning towards that probably doesn't happen. I just think it's more likely than it has been in years past. It certainly wasn't going to happen when Anthony Brown was a quarterback running all the time. It wasn't going to happen with, Tyler Shuck, who ran a pretty good amount. Herbert in 2019 didn't run a ton. That was certainly a chance with CJ Verdell and Travis Dye. But I think that for this Oregon rushing attack, I hope it takes a step forward from last year. Last year was the least productive rushing offense that Oregon has had since Dan Lanning got hired. And it's actually taken a step back on a yards per game basis in each year that has gone by. So 23 was less than 22 and 24 was less than 23. I hope it can stabilize a little just so you don't put quite as much on Dante Moore's shoulders. And if both Mekhi Hughes, the Tulane transfer, and Noah Whittington going into his 4th year as a Duck put up 1,000-yard seasons, hey, I'm here for it. But I definitely wanted to shout out Zach and Nick for getting that right, because off the top of my head, I would not have had that one. Even if you'd given me 2008, I don't think I would. I probably would have said Jeremiah Johnson. Actually, I probably would have in my head said Jeremiah Johnson had graduated already. So I probably would have said Blount and someone else. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't have those two, but a couple of you did. So good on you there. Other statistical predictions I wanted to get to today. I ran a poll a few days back about, which is the most scientific way to collect data, of course. 101 of you voted on Twitter, and most people, about 80% or so, think Dante Moore is going over 3,000 yards, and a very, very small fraction of you all think he's under 3,000 yards. Now, and I'll get to more of those stat predictions in just a moment, but the 3,000 yard marker, I think, is a fair one with how productive this offense has been. This is Dante Moore's third season of college football, and he has played a little bit, so he's got some experience. It's the Loki Avengers experience, but it's still experience, and I think it's fair to expect him to have a few more yards, just given the system he's in and how committed Oregon is to throwing the football and the RPOs they put in. Certainly 2012 Mariota, they had plenty of RPOs. It was still different. They had more of a commitment to the run game that year, and Mariota himself went for over 700 yards on the ground. But Mariota's first year starting, he went for just under 2,700 yards through the air. So I won't see it as disappointment. Like, I do expect, especially because that Oregon team played 13 games. This one could only play 13. I'd hope this team plays 14. That's another reason I'd say, yeah, Dante Moore should probably be over 3,000 yards passing for us to feel good about, the baseline level of production he's capable of in this offense as Oregon's quarterback, and then we can raise those expectations, presuming he comes back for 2026. So I asked some of you out there about your stat predictions for Dante Moore, and several of you sent them in, of course, and some of them went like this. Cole said the floor's got to be 25 total touchdowns, about 3,000 yards, and under 10 interceptions. I tell you, the one that would excite me the most is the third one, under 10 interceptions. That would be phenomenal. Mariota's first year was in the mid-20s, I think, in touchdown passes, and only had 6 interceptions, and he then threw 4 interceptions each of his next 2 seasons. Yeah, his first year, 68.5%. This is Mariota. 2,677 yards, 32 touchdowns passing, 6 interceptions, and he ran for 5 touchdowns with 752 yards on the ground. So, yeah, I think 3,000 yards or so and 25 is the floor. Yeah, I think that's the offense working. I think that's a pretty good prediction. Around 3,000 yards, 25 total touchdowns, but the most important thing, because of what happened during his time at UCLA, under 10 interceptions. I am with you there. Duck Knight said more than 3,500 yards. Oof. He says, I'd say 4,000, but I think Mekhi Hughes is going to have a season. Well, I think you said Mekhi Hughes is going to have a season. I think you meant to say Mekhi Hughes is going to have a huge season. I don't know. Anyway, 4,000. Yeah, there's no way I'm expecting that this year. If he goes for over 4,000 yards, he will be in New York City. Oregon will win 11 games at least, and he will be in New York City for the Heisman ceremony, which would be awesome. That's something I more expect next year than I do this year in his first year start. Even Joe Burrow, before he had the greatest quarterback season in the history of college football, in my view, had one season at LSU before where they were good, not great. I think Oregon is on a similar sort of trajectory potentially here, not necessarily to be one of if not the best team ever in college football history, but just be good in the playoff discussion, then the next year take that jump and be great with a second-year starting quarterback. So I agree Mekhi Hughes is bound to have a 1,000-yard season. Will there be a second one? I don't know. I will have to see. I've got a 5 on that one. John sent this one in. My prediction is that Dante Moore throws above 67%. I hope so. With 30 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. He cracks the top 10 for quarterbacks, but as you said, Spencer, he's not invited to New York, but he's definitely on the short list for 2026 to win the Heisman. Yeah, I'm on board with all of that. And under 10 interceptions, I can live with that. Depending on where they are, Dylan Gabriel last year, of course, protected the ball well, but he had 6 interceptions, and 3 of them were inside the 10-yard line in a 2 or 3 week span, Michigan State and UCLA. But Also, just to give you a statistical reference, Dylan Gabriel last year, 73% completion, 72.9 if you want to be exact. He went for over 3,800 yards, 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That was in 14 games. So if Dante Moore were to go for 4,000 yards and in his first year starting puts up better numbers than the best season of Dylan Gabriel's career, who was playing his 6th season of college football, boy, it'd be exciting times. Exciting times in Eugene indeed. I'd be here for it. I'd be here for it across the board. That'd be a lot to expect this year. But 67%, yeah, I think you should, in this offense, minimum 67%. Because that is what I consider upper 60s. I don't know if some people would reserve that for 68 and above or include 66, but 67 and above, yeah, you should be able to get there if Dante Moore is having the sort of season that we want him to have in 2025. Under 10 interceptions. That might be my favorite part of all these predictions. If you've got your own, you want me to evaluate or aspect of, Dante Moore's game, by all means, drop it in the comments below. Let me know. All that stuff. Believe it or not, I love spring sports. I follow them very closely. All right, I follow them moderately closely. Softball, first pitch tonight against who else? Who else would Oregon be playing in a postseason setting today? It had to be Liberty, didn't it? It had to be Liberty. Why not? Fiesta Bowl, first round of the NCAA tournament for men's basketball, and now softball. Oregon's going for the postseason trifecta against the Flames out of Conference USA, who pulled a massive upset. It is the first time since they started ranking teams the number 1 overall seed lost in a regional. That's never happened before. Has not happened before in college softball. And here we are. So no, the Flames are not to be taken lightly. Would I rather play them coming off of the emotional high of pulling that upset than play Texas A&M, number 1 team in the country? Yes. Yes, I would. No doubt about it. Doesn't mean this is going to be easy. And Oregon did not have an easy time getting out of their regional. If you aren't aware, they lost their first game to Stanford 15-1 on their home field, beat Weber State, eliminated the Wildcats out of the Big Sky, then had to go beat Stanford twice, beat them 15-5 and 10-7 with Des Patman hitting the walk-off 3-run homer in the bottom of the 7th, sent the Jane into a frenzy, and I saw the Oregon softball account tweet that there are a few standing room only tickets that are available. I hope this place is popping. I hope it is. A couple of years ago when Oregon hosted the Super Regional and came up just a little bit short against Oral Roberts, that place was up. It was phenomenal. PK Park was rocking. I hope it is all weekend. This Oregon team is really good. They have been all year. They got way underseeded coming into this NCAA tournament. They were a top 5 team at the end of the year. They got upset in round 1 of the Big Ten tournament, and they fell down to a number 16 seed. Like, they almost weren't hosting a regional. It was crazy. Absolutely, positively crazy. But they're in this position. 2 things that have to happen for Oregon to advance. Number 1, hit a home run. This stat is almost too crazy to believe, but is 100% real. When Oregon hits a home run in any game this year, any game, and this is not, an offensively driven team or a pitching driven team, like, this is a very balanced Oregon roster. They have got elite arms. They have got a bunch of high-end bats. They can hit for average. They can hit for power. They're deep up and down the lineup. When Oregon hits a home run this year, they're 41-0. When they don't, they are 10-8. There's a team that has won over 50 games. So is Liberty, by the way. The Flames have also won over 50 games and can really swing the bat. I'll get to that more in just a moment. But it's not like there's, a mythical aura. I bet the players don't even know that they're 41-0 when they hit a home run this year. What it generally means, though, is number one, those home runs are often coming with runners on base. Number two, offense can be contagious. Hitting can be contagious. So one player hits one, maybe you're hitting two or three more. And then if you get some good pitching on the back end, yeah, when someone like Stacey Chambers steps up like she did, who had barely been used this season, she made just her 14th appearance of the year, went 4 innings against Stanford. I mean, she was brilliant, absolutely positively brilliant. And I think she's thrown less than 30 innings all season long. It is absolutely, it was awesome. There were a lot of awesome components about what happened during that regional game. But Chambers had thrown fewer than 25 innings going into that third game against Stanford with their season on the line. And now here they have a chance against Liberty. So go out, take game one, first of all, and hit a home run. You're going to have a really good chance of doing it. Okay, that's important thing number one. Important thing number two, get Lindsey Grine back to being Lindsey Grine. She was named the most improved player, I believe, in the Big Ten this year. Understandably so. She went out and was dominant this year. Over 160 innings, an ERA under 3. Like her ERA 2.15. For the last month or so, since about the end of April, it has been a struggle. She has a 28-2 record in 48 appearances this year and threw a team high 163 innings. She's been a stud. Transferred from Virginia Tech, has been so good all season long. For the last month, she's not been herself. She just straight up hasn't been. And in the regional against Stanford, she was not. And yeah, there was an error by her catcher that would have ended the inning. It didn't. And then she gave up the grand slam. But your ace is not typically working with that thin of a margin where one play like that leads to a disastrous inning. So if Oregon does those two things, leave the yard and get Lindsey Grine back to giving you quality innings and going 4 or 5 and giving up 3 runs or fewer, I think that's going to be more than enough. Because Oregon, on paper, is the more talented team. So is Texas A&M. And the staff becomes even more important when you look at this Liberty lineup and how they were able to knock off the Aggies, which is literally one of the biggest upsets in recent memory. And for college softball, they can hit the ball. They have got 5 girls hitting 330 or above. And against Texas A&M, they won 8-5. They lost 14-11 in 8 innings and won 6-5. So they averaged over 8 runs a game against the number 1 team in the country. Now, the pitching staff wasn't lights out in that series. It did enough, of course, for them to get the win. But at home, I feel solid about Oregon's bats going up against the Liberty staff, just based on how they performed against Texas A&M. And just in general, it's hard to not like this Oregon lineup with just the amount of speed. They just put so much pressure on a team and on defense with what they do on the base paths. So I think that if they are able to go out and hold Liberty to 5 runs a game or fewer, I think Oregon's going to be in a really good spot because I trust the bats to come through. If you start to get into a shootout, that's where Liberty can sneak up on you, just like they did Texas A&M. But the biggest thing is Liberty won game 1. And when you're the favorite in a series like this, Texas A&M just learned that. When you lose game 1, boy, you feel a new sense of urgency. And Oregon just had that, of course, in the regional last weekend. But you can't let them go out and win game 1. So if Oregon loses game 1, do I feel like they're incapable of winning their next 2? Nope, absolutely not. But you got to put the pressure. Do everything you can to put the pressure, which on paper coming into this game is squarely on Oregon. Put the pressure in the other dugout. Put the pressure on them to keep up with your bats. Put the pressure on them with the speed on the base pass. Put the pressure on them to try and come back and win 2 games in a row on the road. Jump on them early, jump on them often. You get off to a strong start. Oregon can win the first 2 games. They could lose the first 2 games. But I can't wait to watch. It's going to be really, really fun. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.